Hello and welcome to Midday Report on TVP World. I'm Marie Cato. Poland has formally requested an exemption from European borrowing limits with the European Commission in order to maintain its defence spending levels. The National Escape Clause was put in place to allow members to exceed EU spending limits in order to invest in defence. Poland is only the second country in the bloc that has signalled it would make use of the National Escape Clause along with Portugal. It allows countries to raise their defence spending by 1.5% over 4 years without any penalties if it takes countries above the 3% GDP deficit threshold. The European Commission hopes it will help boost EU defence investments by €650 billion. However, EU countries have so far proven to be skittish about increasing their debts. Poland has reached an agreement with the United States to purchase 400 air-to-air missiles in a $1.3 billion deal. The new AIM-120 D3 missiles will be used by Poland and other NATO countries with F-35 fighters.
The purchase was announced by Polish Defense Minister Władysław Kosiniak-Kamysz on social media platform X. Strategic Cooperation Plus is bearing fruit. The latest air-to-air missiles will be delivered to our Air Force. The US Department of State has just approved Poland's purchase of 400 of the latest AIM-120 D3 missiles. Their range reaches up to 180 kilometers. This is another step in the great modernization of the Polish armed forces. Compared to the previous generations currently in use by the Polish Air Force, the new AMRAAM missiles feature better guidance systems and a significantly increased range. In addition to the missiles, Poland will receive test equipment, encryption devices, spare parts, technical documentation, as well as engineering and training support. Other countries that will receive the missiles include the United Kingdom, the Netherlands and Australia.
The Social Democratic Party of Germany has backed a treaty for a coalition with the conservative CDU-CSU, paving the way for Friedrich Merz to take office as German Chancellor and to swear in his cabinet ministers. The SPD also agreed to name party co-leader Lars Klingbeil Vice Chancellor and Finance Minister. In the vote, which ended on Tuesday just before midnight, 84% of SPD members who took part came out in favor of the deal. Their approval now enables Conservative leader Friedrich Merz to become Chancellor on May 6th. All other cabinet members, 6 of whom will be appointed by the SPD, are to be announced on Monday, May 5th. Boris Pistorius, the current defense minister in the outgoing government, is likely to retain his post. Manfred Weber was re-elected as the European People's Party president during the first day of the ongoing EPP Congress in Valencia. The German politician secured 502 votes in favor, while 61 of his party colleagues voted against him.
Weber took the floor in Valencia as the final speaker of the first day of the EPP Congress on Tuesday. During his statement, the German MEP praised the rise of EPP members in Europe, like in Poland and Moldova, and hailed Ursula von der Leyen's re-election as the head of the European Commission. Weber then pointed to his role in enlarging the European People's Party, recalling a trip to Hungary to strike a deal with the TISA party, led by Peter Magyar. The first day of the Congress was co-headlined by Ursula von der Leyen, who spoke about global trade amid uncertainty caused by US President Donald Trump's new tariff policy.
And yes, with a clear path.
U.S. Special Envoy to Ukraine Keith Kellogg said in an interview with Fox News that, quote, Russia is not winning this war. He pointed to the enormous losses the Russian armed forces have sustained while failing to take any of the larger cities in Ukraine. Our Kyiv correspondent Oz Katerji unpacks Kellogg's remarks.
Kyiv will be welcoming the words given by US Special Envoy to Ukraine and Russia, Keith Kellogg, in an interview given with Fox News on Tuesday. In the interview, Keith Kellogg dismissed Putin's calls for a 3-day ceasefire on Victory Day, what the Russians call Victory Day, with Keith Kellogg referring to that as absurd. He reiterated Washington's desire to see a 30-day unconditional ceasefire declared between Ukraine and Russia that they hope to extend permanently. Now, Keith Kellogg also said that in his view, in America's view, he does not see Russia winning this war, and that he sees that the Ukrainians are in a good position. And while these words will be welcomed here in Kyiv, the larger question is how much does Keith Kellogg actually represent the views of the White House? While he may be entitled the US Special Envoy to Ukraine and Russia, the man who has actually been leading negotiations with Putin is Steve Witkoff, the US Special Envoy to the Middle East. And Steve Witkoff's comments, particularly around control over those 5 illegally annexed regions of Ukraine that Russia claims ownership of, those words have caused alarm in Kyiv. So it's unclear whether the White House really has the view that Keith Kellogg has, or whether it's more in line with the view expressed by Steve Witkoff. Now, President Zelensky has also released a statement on Wednesday morning following further Russian airstrikes on Ukrainian territory, saying this is why we need pressure on Russia, strong additional sanctions that will work. Pressure, not just words or attempts to convince, must force Russia to cease fire and end the war. It's Oz Chatterjee reporting from Kyiv for TVP World.
The US administration is not too keen on imposing more pressure on Moscow, as it sees ties between the Kremlin and Beijing as already too deep, said our guest geopolitics expert Valina Chakarova. She added, however, that the US could impose further sanctions on Russia's energy and financial sectors.
I would not exclude the combined approach where the US still can actually impose sanctions, for instance, on the energy or financial sector. And right now we know for a fact that the Russian economy is hurting because of the already imposed sanctions on behalf of the US leadership, already starting with Biden administration, when it comes to LNG, when it comes to shadow fleet and so on. I don't see, honestly, a lot of niches for the US administration to really impose a lot of pressure on Moscow right now, on the Kremlin. Why? Because the Kremlin is holding the Chinese cards. And basically, the fear on behalf of America is that this modus operandi between China and Russia is becoming far too deep.
Russia launched yet another strike on Ukraine overnight, targeting multiple regions of the country. At least 1 person has been killed and 45 others were wounded, including children.
The Russian drone attack struck multiple locations across Kharkiv, Ukraine's second largest city. An apartment building, private houses, as well as a medical facility were destroyed in the aftermath. Footage released by the State Emergency Service of Ukraine shows first responders on the scene putting out a fire and local residents being rescued from the rubble. The Russian strike also targeted Dnipro in Ukraine's southeast, triggering fires and killing 1 person. Kherson was also hit, with 2 people wounded and damage to several houses. Kharkiv, Dnipro, and Kherson have been regular Russian targets since the start of the war.
Bulgaria's pro-Russian Nationalist Revival Party has signed an agreement for joint cooperation and equal partnership with Vladimir Putin's United Russia Party. The aim of the deal is to strengthen ties between Bulgaria and Russia.
The agreement provides for the exchange of experience, ideas, and political practices between the two parties, according to Revival, and is an important step towards the restoration of full-fledged Bulgaria-Russia relations. It was signed by the two parties during a recent visit to Moscow by a Revival delegation at the invitation of Putin's United Russia. With 33 out of 240 MPs, Revival is the third political force in the Bulgarian parliament. The party managed to enter parliament after gathering just over 13% of support in the last parliamentary elections in October of 2024.
Questions are mounting in Italy after reports that 16 migrants transferred to an Italian-run detention center in Albania have gone missing.
An opposition MP raised the alarm following his visit to the Gjader Repatriation and Detention Center, where only 25 of the 41 migrants sent 2 weeks ago could be accounted for. Access to internal records suggests that some migrants were repatriated, released due to legal or health concerns, or returned to Italy, but no official statement has been issued. This time around, part of the migrant group seems to be in the center to stay, unlike Italy's previous transfers to Albania, which were overruled by court decisions and the migrants were transported back to Italy. The hub, run by Italy under a 2023 agreement with Albania, has been criticized for a lack of transparency and inadequate oversight, as well as the hefty costs of the undertaking. Human rights groups have reported dozens of incidents at the facility, including suicide attempts, and have warned of broader systemic failures in the management of such centers.
Swedish police have managed to apprehend the 16-year-old suspect of a shooting that killed 3 people in the Swedish city of Uppsala on Tuesday afternoon. Law enforcement says the shooting is being investigated as a homicide, as nothing yet suggests the incident was an act of terror or a hate crime.
According to the spokesperson for the Swedish police, a single person left the scene using an electric scooter. It is not clear, however, if the person was the perpetrator or a witness to the crime. Additionally, the Swedish police stated the victims are yet to be identified and declined to speculate on the motive for the killings. Electric scooters have been used several times as a mode of escape following gang clashes in Sweden. Uppsala, about 40 minutes from Stockholm by car, has seen many gang-related shootings and stabbings in the past decade. However, they usually occurred outside the city center.
U.S. President Donald Trump marked his first 100 days in office with a rally in Warren, Michigan. Standing in front of cheering supporters, Trump claimed it was the most successful first 100 days of any Washington administration, despite polls showing Americans growing dissatisfied with the economic turmoil caused by Trump's tariffs.
And we're here tonight in the heartland of our nation to celebrate the most successful first 100 days of any administration in the history of our country, and that's according to many, many people. And also, we cannot allow a handful of communist, radical left judges to obstruct the enforcement of our laws and assume the duties that belong solely to the President of the United States. Judges are trying to take away the power given to the President to keep our country safe, and it's not a good thing. We will cut more than $1 trillion in wasteful and unnecessary spending. And in the next fiscal year, it'll all be done. We're going to have something that you won't even believe. We will end inflation, slash prices. We've already ended inflation, raise wages, and give you the greatest economy in the history of the world.
Ukraine is introducing a new video game-like incentive scheme aimed at boosting the effectiveness of its drone units on the battlefield.
The program, known as the Army of Drones bonus, awards soldiers with points for verified drone strikes against Russian targets. Footage of the successful attacks must be uploaded to Ukraine's military command system, and subsequently the units can exchange points for equipment through a new online Amazon-like platform, Brave One Market. Officials say the system helps allocate resources to the most efficacious units and bypass bureaucratic delays by allowing frontline troops to order supplies directly. Ukraine's digital minister Mikhailo Fedorov said the points-based model is inspired by video game mechanics and is already being updated to reflect battlefield priorities. Around 90% of drone units have joined the scheme, which also helps improve the real-time tracking of confirmed strikes.
Paris Saint-Germain took a large step toward this year's Champions League final by defeating Arsenal 1-0 in their away match. An early goal by Ousmane Dembele and a good display by goalkeeper Gianluigi Donnarumma gives the Qatari-funded Parisians the advantage for the return.
Dembele fired home off the post in the 4th minute from a Kvaratskhelia assist, as PSG dominated the opening stages. Arsenal did recover and gave a good display of themselves, with Donnarumma having to extend himself to the fullest when faced with a Leandro Trossard shot. Manager Luis Enrique's side held firm for the rest of the match and produced some of the best chances in the final phase of the match. The 1-0 does leave Arsenal with some perspective for the second leg in Paris on May 7th.
And on that note, we wrap up Midday Report at 2 p.m. Thanks for joining us and stay tuned for more on TVP World. Goodbye.